Hello everyone, in today's video we will continue the deep dive into the freshly released part 1 of the UFO files from the Department of War's website. The files were published on Friday and we are going to take a look at them in more detail. We have already seen the videos, we have talked about the UFO sightings and events which were investigated by the FBI. And today we are going to take a look at the briefings from the famous Apollo missions. There is quite a lot of material here, and I'm not sure if we are going to fit everything into one video. This may be split into two. But without much further ado, we can start with the file dedicated to Apollo 11 and the technical crew debriefing. This is the flight that landed on the moon, most famously. And the file is dated to the 31st of July 1969. It was prepared by the Mission Operations Branch. Yada yada, we've got downgraded and the file should be declassified after 12 years. Got the classic notices, it's no longer confidential. Got indexing data from 1969. And we've got the statements from the astronauts. Mike Collins said, "I think it's particularly when you get into the later flights of extended EVAs and lunar activity, somehow the crew must place themselves in a frame of mind of looking on the separation of the LM as the beginning of the flight plan and to relax, get plenty of sleep and conserve their energies in all the events leading up to that point. To arrive in lunar orbit tired can create problems, and it's possible to do that if you don't approach it in the right frame of mind." Neil Armstrong: "I think Mike's hit the nail on the head. We did precisely that. We got a lot of rest and got into lunar orbit eager to go to work, and that's a particularly fortunate position to be in." It's Collins again. "This is something we've talked about before the flight, and I don't know how you can get yourself in that frame of mind, but I think it is a frame of mind. You have to get yourself convinced that there will be a nice relaxing couple of days going to the moon." Buzz Aldrin: "The first unusual thing that we saw, I guess, was one day out or something pretty close to the moon. It has a sizable dimension to it, so we put the monocular on it." Collins: "How did we see that thing? Did we just look out the window and there it was?" Aldrin: "Yes, and we weren't sure about what it might be. The S-4B, I think it's the Saturn 4B, the carrier rocket that they used during that flight. We called the ground and we were told the S-4B was 6,000 miles away. We had a problem with the high gain about this time, didn't we?" Collins: "There was something. We felt a bomb, or maybe I just imagined it." Armstrong: "He was wondering whether the mesa had come off." And Collins again: "I don't guess we felt anything." And Buzz Aldrin: "Of course, we were seeing all sorts of little objects going by at the various dumps, and then we happened to see this one brighter object going by. We couldn't think of anything else it could be other than the S-4B. We looked at it through the monocular and it seemed to have a bit of an L shape to it." Armstrong: "Like an open suitcase." Aldrin: "We were in PTC at the time, so each one of us had a chance to take a look at this, and it certainly seemed to be within our vicinity and of a very sizable dimension." Armstrong: "We should say that it was right at the limit of the resolution of the eye. It was very difficult to tell just what shape it was, and there was no way to tell the size without knowing the range or the range without knowing the size." Aldrin: "So then I got down in the LEB and started looking for it in the optics. We were grossly misled because with the sextant of focus, what we saw appeared to be a cylinder." Armstrong: "Or really two rings?" Aldrin: "Yes." Armstrong: "Two rings, two connected rings. I mean, this is interesting because while a cylindrical object could indeed be the booster rocket, I believe, then two connected rings sounds like something different than a rocket." Although Collins says, "No, it looked like a hollow cylinder to me. It didn't look like two connected rings. You could see this thing tumbling, and when it came around and on, you could look round down in its guts. It was a hollow cylinder. But then you could change the focus on the sextant and it would be replaced by this open book shape. It was really weird. So yeah, I think that this is some sort of reported anomaly, because the thing was changing shape and optics alone wouldn't explain this. So Aldrin just said, I guess there's not too much more to say about it other than it wasn't a cylinder. And Mike Collins again, it was during the period when we thought it was a cylinder that we inquired about the S4B, and we had almost convinced ourselves that's what it had to be. But we don't have any more conclusions than that really. The fact that we didn't see it much past this one time period, we really don't have a conclusion as to what it might have been, how big it was, or how far away it was. It was something that wasn't part of the urine dump, we're pretty sure of that. Skipping ahead a bit, when we jettisoned the LM, we fired an explosive charge and got rid of the docking rings, and the LM went boom. Pieces came off the LM. It could have been some mylar or something that had somehow come loose from the LM. Aldrin, we thought it could have been a panel, but it didn't appear to have that shape at all. Collins, that's right, and for some reason we thought it might have been a part of the high gain antenna. It might have been about the time we had high gain antenna problems. In the back of my mind, I have some reason to suspect that its origin was from the spacecraft. And Buzz Aldrin has a longer speech here. The other observation that I made accumulated gradually. I don't know whether I saw it the first night, but I'm sure I saw it the second night. I was trying to go to sleep with all the lights out. I observed what I thought were little flashes inside the cabin, spaced a couple of minutes apart, and I didn't think too much about it other than just note in my mind that they continued to be there. I couldn't explain why my eye would see these flashes. During Trans-Earth Coast, we had more time and I devoted more opportunity to investigating what this could have been. It was at this point that I was able to observe on 2 different occasions that instead of observing just one flash, I could see double flashes at points separated by maybe a foot. At other times I could see a line with no direction of motion, and the only thing that comes to my mind is that this is some sort of penetration. At least that's my guess without much to support it. Some penetration of some object into the spacecraft that causes an emission as it enters the cabin itself. Sometimes it was one flash on entering, possibly departing from the entirely different part of the cabin outside the field of view. The double flashes appear to have an entry and an impact on something such as the struts. For a while I thought it might have been some static electricity, because I was also able, in moving my hand up and down the sleeve restraint, to generate very small sparks of static electricity. But there was a definite difference between the two as I observed it more and more. I tried to correlate this with the direction of the sun. When you put the window shades up, there is still a small amount of leakage. You can generally tell within 20 or 30 degrees the direction of the sun. It seemed as though they were coming from that general direction. However, I couldn't really say if there was near enough evidence to support that these things were observable on the side of the spacecraft where the sun was. A little bit of evidence seemed to support this. I asked the others if they had seen any of these, and until about the last day they hadn't. And Armstrong, Buzz, I'd seen some light, but I just always attributed this to sunlight, because the window covers leak a little bit of light, no matter how tightly secured. The only time I observed it was the last night when we really looked for it. I spent probably an hour carefully watching the inside of the spacecraft, and I probably made 50 significant observations in this period. Buzz Aldrin. Sometimes a minute or two would go by, and then you'd see the two within the space of 10 seconds. On an average, I'd say, just as a guess, it was maybe something like 1 a minute. Certainly more than enough to convince you that it wasn't an optical illusion. It did give you a rather funny feeling to contemplate that something was zapping through the cabin. There wasn't anything you could do about it. And we've got Neil Armstrong talking again. It could be something like Buzz suggested, mainly a neutron or some kind of an atomic particle that would be in the visible spectrum. So basically they saw some strange flashes of light, but these may have had a natural explanation. What piqued my attention in this part was that earlier on they did mention some anomalous shape that they couldn't fully explain by any part of the spacecraft coming off, that changed shape depending on what kind of optics they used to look at it. And there is another part of the same Apollo crew debriefing, which includes point 21 visual sightings. Neil Armstrong. Most of the items in section 21 visual sightings have been previously reported. 21.4 Translunar and Trans-Earth flight. Aldrin. There was only one minor observation returning from the moon. Looking back at it, at the time after Mars had passed behind the moon, there was one time period where I imagined that the image of Mars was coming from a region where it couldn't come from because it was in a dark portion of the moon. This obviously was an optical illusion of some sort. Armstrong. I suspect that it was, in fact, just immediately adjacent to the horizon. Aldrin. We must have looked at it immediately after it had come from the backside. Armstrong. Yes. Then we've got lunar orbit. And Aldrin saying, in lunar orbit following ascent, we did note and mention to the ground that approaching CDH when the Earth came up above the lunar horizon, I observed what appeared to be a fairly bright light source, which we tentatively ascribed to a possible laser. That seemed to be the best possible explanation until we were coming back in the command module approaching the Earth and were able to observe something that gave about the same appearance. When putting the monocular on the light source, it appeared as though it was the reflection of the sun from a relatively smooth body of water such as a lake. I think we've revised our initial conclusion as to what the source of the light that we saw coming from the Earth. If no one owes up to having beamed the laser towards the moon at the time, it was more probably a reflection of a lake. I still think it's an unusual phenomenon at that distance to see so bright a source of light. In the film, it didn't appear as though this was going to show up at all. The Earth was too bright. So basically they also observed some sort of a weird light which should not exactly be there unless someone's show used what I would assume to be a very high-powered laser, judging by their descriptions here. So it's not much, and the rumors that they have seen much more than that obviously are floating around in ufology and in the UFO space, but still we have heard something. We'll also cover the Apollo 12 flight today as well, so let's move to that. So this document from Apollo 12 is a transcript of communications, but these are all only extracts, so there's like tape 90/3 and the page of the document is 742, so I believe there's a huge documentation dedicated to this particular flight. And let's see what goes here. There's a lot of abbreviations here, so we'll skip those and just read the text probably. So let's go. That's affirmative. We're ready for the E mode. Intrepid Houston, go. If you'll give us, I believe it's P00 and accept, we'll give you a CSM state vector and RLS update. You have P00 and accept. Hello Houston, Yankee Clipper. Yankee Clipper, Houston, loud and clear. Well, hello there, stranger. How are you? Morning, Dick. We are fine. How are you? Well, pretty good. I hope you would like to have some company for a change. Roger, got the house clean? As a matter of fact, I just finished that. I sure do. Got everything in order. Ready to go towards DLM, I think it's lunar module, and bring back. That's quite a chore keeping this thing clean. Roger, you got a couple of coal miners coming up to see you? That's okay, I will be glad to see them. Intrepid Houston, the computer is yours. Break. Yankee Clipper, if you will, go P00 and accept, we have an uplink. All yours. Houston, you got the lift of time for me. Stand by. Intrepid Houston, your lift of time is 142.0347. I copy 142.0347.00. Affirmative. Clipper Houston, computer is yours. Okay, and Jerry, will you find out what they want to do about this battery charge, because I'm using the bus ties during the rendezvous? Roger. Yankee Clipper Houston, why don't you figure on terminating the battery charge at line of sight? Alright, I could let it go until just before liftoff. That way it might take it all the way up. Clipper Houston, we prefer that you terminate at LOS on this pass. Roger. Roger, there will be one less thing for us to keep track of prior to liftoff. Okay. Say Houston, Intrepid. Intrepid Houston, go. Roger, when you look out the AOT in the dark quadrant, you can see these lights, particles of light, flashes of light just seem to come from. In this case, I'm looking in quadrant 1, which is the left one. It's coming from behind me, the left, and they are just sailing off in space. I was thinking they are dropping from my water boiler, but it looks like some of those things are escaping the moon. They really haul out of here and just press off at the stars. Well, now that's interesting. There seems to be some sort of communication from the lunar module, and there seems to be some kind of object escaping the lunar surface, from what I understand here. And the communication goes as follows. Roger. Yankee Clipper Houston with a P-22 tracking pad. Go ahead. Roger, your target is lunar module. T1 is 139.5739, T2 is 140.0238, south 05, latitude is -3. Roger, T112. Clipper Houston, will give the data a good evaluation before we do anything with it. Houston Intrepid. Intrepid Houston, go. Got sort of an interesting thing going on AGS right now. I didn't notice earlier, but it may just be because the lights are brighter now. I'm getting an all 8s flash on both the address and information registers at about 1/5 the brilliance of the normal numbers. And it's pulsing every second. Roger, Al. If I turn down the illumination level just a little bit, it's not noticeable. Hello Houston Intrepid, you ready for my RCS hot fire? Intrepid Houston, Roger, fire away. Okay. Intrepid Houston, go. Roger, Al, Fredo is here. He and I have both seen that phenomenon on your DEDA during testing of most all the spacecrafts up at Bethpage, and it's probably an EMI. That's what we've been just talking about, but we thought we'd just touch in on it. When you go to your roll rate, roll left, pitch up. Roger, I think TRW's got a workup on this problem. Okay? Here you go, Houston, with roll, pitch, and yaw. Roger, Pete. But I don't have you in the sextant. That's okay. Your blinking light's just not blinking, that's all. Hey Houston, it looks like our tracking light burned out. Dick hasn't been able to find us in this sextant. And on the first night side pass we had a little bits and pieces floating along with us, and we could tell that the tracking light was flashing on them. And we still have, I presume to think, bits and pieces floating around and nothing flashing on them. So I'm pretty sure it burned out. Roger, Pete. Yes sir, okay. Hi Intrepid. Okay. This is Houston. How did your sweep down fore and aft go? It's getting much cleaner in here running this way, and also Yankee Clipper informs me he has the television all set up. When we come around the horn, we'll come around with the television on in Vox. Roger. Who knows, you may get to see the first whiffer deal. Roger, Pete. Our electrical watchers say that the current indicates that your tracking light is on. Okay, now we just turned it off. Now does the current show that? It sure does, Pete. you're flying through the air backwards then, Pete, because I don't see it. Well, my ball tells me that I'm pointed at you, Dix, and so does my radar. And that's it. And I was wondering if the issues with the light, like with the tracking light and something, may have been an object that was sort of following the spacecraft, the lunar module, whatever piece of it was, but that's only my guess. As you can see, this is page 778, 748, so it's very fragmentary, 743. So I don't think we would get a meaningful full picture out of that. Not only this, just 4 pages out of several hundred of them. But yeah, like I said, there's nothing that majorly interesting here. As time pushes and there are constraints, I think that we'll stop at this tonight. I will try to cobble up a video dedicated to the Apollo 17 flight tomorrow, because it has got 3 documents assigned to it in the system. And after that we'll also go through some other documents like international cables, so basically exchanges at the higher levels of the ambassadorial and other contacts. There are also huge archives like the Cometa report from France that we may go through at one point, because it's quite interesting, and I believe it's one of the most solid pieces of any serious analysis on UFOs, really, and probably the closest thing that we had to disclosure, and that we maybe still have, depends on how this release by the Pentagon pans out this year. So I think that could be interesting, and we've got quite a lot of files also posted. I have also heard that there are going to be videos released in approximately, I hope it's just a few days, and probably something like a week. These would be the 46 files that Representative Anna Paulina Luna requested from the Pentagon, some of which are in very high quality, at least apparently and allegedly. We will see if this is true. And today there was a lot of noise on the internet about what Ross Coulthard said, that one of his sources, I think it was Mr. Guiber, from what I remember, who was involved with the with NASA, I believe. And well, anyway, there was a mention of a high-res video taken from on board a B-52 bomber, and basically the video shows a UFO, a craft approaching the B-52 and its cockpit at a very close range, such that the visual is very clear. And in addition to the craft itself, the people recording the video could see, and it's apparently seen in the video as well, that the craft had a window, or whatever it is that the NHI may use it as a window in the craft, and through it was visible a humanoid alien. So basically probably would look like a typical gray alien, from what I understand. I don't think we'll see that, and definitely not yet. But if this video really exists, it would be like probably the disclosure, I believe, something of that magnitude in 4K or even higher resolution. So we will see. Alright, so thank you very much for watching today. I will be back with you tomorrow, and we will take another look at the files then. Take care.